Hi everyone, Amy here. Once again, we're talking about some heavy stuff with this documentary. There's religious trauma, there's talk of cults, there's talk of sexual assault, talk of child sexual assault. So if any of that is not suitable for you, please feel free to skip this episode. Thanks and enjoy the show.
Tom?
Yeah.
We have the first fire truck that's come down this road is coming down here now.
How far are you? How long would it take to get a fire truck from Waco?
Well,
A while.
20 minutes,
Yeah.
15 to 20 minutes, would that be about right? We are 10 miles outside of town, and a lot of it's two-lane roads, and they're not in the best condition.
Right. We want to show you. We want to show you now what happened earlier today. This began at about 6 o'clock this morning local time. They began to punch through various parts of the building and then filled it with CS gas. They didn't throw in tear gas grenades, but they began to close in on them. They said it was not the final assault. They wanted to make life uncomfortable. They demanded, the federal agents demanded a surrender earlier this morning. Now we're back on live picture, I believe. These are the first fire trucks arriving in Waco. A small village has grown up about 2 miles from the compound. That's where Jim Cummins is. How many press people were there today, Jim?
Well, at the beginning of the day, Tom, there were probably fewer than 3 dozen of us, and now it's, of course, gotten up into the hundreds again, which it was during the early days of this siege. We have now seen at least 3 fire trucks go through here, and the town of Belmead, which is nearby, also sent another truck in, so that's 4, but it looked like a rather old, outdated fire truck.
Yeah. Well, the damage plainly is done. There is no saving any part of that compound now. Unless there are parts of it that I can't see that have escaped fire. It looks like it was just fully involved from my television point of view, Jim. Is that the same for you?
Yes, absolutely. As I look at it on the horizon now, I'm seeing less smoke, which means it's probably near the ground.
Yeah, it is. It's there's just a few charred ribs of the building standing.
Hi everyone, welcome to Little Miss Recap, the podcast where Amanda, I'm going to need the shame bell a lot.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We can use the shame bell a lot if that's what needs to happen.
The podcast where we talk about cults and Amy, I come to terms with the fact that I probably would have belonged to a cult had I been left to my own devices.
You would.
At an early age. Yes.
You would, but would you be involved in the Brand Davidians?
It's hard to say because
I feel like the atheist in you couldn't have bought into this.
Right. I don't think that I would have done that.
Okay.
But had I met David Koresh at a music store a la David Thibodeau,
right, you might have
would
just
I
wound
have
up
gone
there.
back to his little hippie commune with him? Probably.
Oh no. Okay.
Oh.
I'm so excited to talk about this. I've been waiting to talk about this.
I've been waiting to talk about it too. Guys, I just want to say up front, apologies. I don't feel well and my health is fading as we go.
Right. I can see her face is just changing as we go.
Yeah, my daughter is really sick and I think I got it from her. And I woke up this morning, I was like, eh. But
Oh,
nothing
no.
keeps me from Waco. Nothing
No.
keeps me from Waco.
No.
Amanda, what is your history with Waco? Do you remember it happening?
Oh,
Tell us a
absolutely. I
little
remember
bit.
it happening for sure. So, I absolutely remember it happening. And I remember multiple things about it. I was in college when it happened. So, and I was a political science major. And I was
Oh, okay.
president of College Democrats or
Oh,
treasurer
look at you.
at the University of Delaware, which is why I have received the very famous Joe Biden shoulder massage. I have received that.
Oh,
It was not creepy at all.
okay.
He's very grandfatherly in everything he does.
Okay.
Anywho, so I remember it very vividly and feeling very, at the time,
Mm-hmm.
very disappointed in the federal government's handling of the whole thing.
How old were you?
What it was 93, right?
Yeah.
93. I was 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 20 years old.
So you were probably a
And
junior in college.
yes, I was. So that is
Okay, I was
yeah.
a junior in high school.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause we're 4
Okay.
years apart, that makes sense.
So
Uh,
you feel like you understood kind of the nuance of what was happening.
at a very high level, but I was like
Mhm.
I also come from a mindset of for those folks who are of a certain ladies of a certain age or people of a certain age who are listening, not all ladies here, people of a certain age listening who are in their late 40s, early 50s may remember Move, which happened in Philadelphia,
Mm.
which
I don't know
was
that. I'm
oh,
not
okay. So
familiar.
I'll give you a really high level of Move. Move um was in a block of Philadelphia, Osage Avenue, and it was this kind of I don't want to say cult because I don't think that's what they are. I think it's more of a communal group of um African Americans who were very much um anti-colonialism.
Mhm.
We're kind of ahead of their time in a lot of ways of thinking of how we're thinking about our history now. Just say that.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, they also didn't have great living conditions. There was also potentially were they trying to incite violence. I don't necessarily think they were. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, Wilson Good, who was the mayor of Philadelphia, dropped incendiary bombs on their houses.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And basically set a city block on fire. And I
Jesus.
remember it very vividly. 'Cause remember on the Today Show how they usually have, like, some, like, bit of like, whatever they're gonna talk about that day, they're like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah happened," and it's, like, a
Mhm.
minute or 2, and then it's like, "And the Today Show." It's, like, right before the intro, it's, like, the cold open.
Mhm.
I will never forget this. I was getting ready for school, and the cold open of the Today Show was Bryant Gumbel saying, "The mayor of Philadelphia has set his city on fire."
Wow.
So I also looked at it through that lens of like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
what can happen when the government may or may not do the. I'm not going to cast. I'm going to say I don't know enough about Move to truly be an expert on it, but I look at it through that lens as well.
Doesn't sound good.
No, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. It was very terrible, and there are people who survived it who are still activists and
Mhm.
working
Mhm.
towards.
I need to see if there's a documentary about that.
Yeah, that
Like,
would be a really good one to
yeah.
do. I know there've been podcasts about it. I should look back on it. I
Here's
was
the
fascinated with it for a while.
thing, like, I love history. And if you love history and you
Same.
know history, you know America's
We don't
not
have great
great.
history. Mm-mm. And here's the thing, can we just say that, like, we can look at American history objectively and say things were bad without saying America itself is terrible and we hate the country.
100%.
I feel like we're in this place right now, if we criticize things that have happened in our history, we're somehow painted with this brush of
Well, that's because certain people in this country think they own patriotism.
correct, correct. And
But
I just wanna
here's
say, I feel like it's important to look at our history and be really honest about it so we don't do it again.
Trevor Noah has a new stand-up special, and he does a bit in the beginning about Germany and their
Mm,
owning of the Holocaust. It's worth watching. It's
I will
pretty
watch it.
interesting because you put that against the backdrop of America trying to literally whitewash their history.
Correct,
It's really interesting.
correct.
And a lot of us know that Germany owns their history like
They
that,
do.
but to hear him put the two side by side is
I've
quite stark difference.
I've said that for a long time. In 2008, I went to Germany for a month, and Germany was like, I don't remember if it was the European Cup or the World Cup, some big soccer hullabaloo. And you know how we see people with like around here, it's Eagles flags sticking out of their windows or
Yes.
Phillies flags or whatever. Someone was telling me this is the first time they'd ever seen people flying German flags that way because
Mhm.
Germans don't know how to feel proud of their country
Right.
because it's such a scary, slippery slope to nationalism and all that. Like they're
Mhm.
so honest about it all the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
And I feel like we could learn a lot from that.
Yeah, and to your point, I've always considered myself a very patriotic person,
Mhm,
and that patriotism is rooted in the potential of what America could be.
mhm.
And I don't feel like we're there yet.
No,
Have
no,
we
I don't
been
either.
there at times? Maybe.
I've
Have we
had
been
moments.
close in some moments? Maybe. But
Yeah.
I see, and I've always felt this way I told you as a little kid, I was writing letters to Reagan. I mean, I was
Right,
always patriotic.
right.
And I always feel like America could be something phenomenal. And
Agreed.
in many ways she is.
Mhm.
but she is not with like, it's like a parent loving their child. They're not
Not without
without
fault.
faults. Come on.
And owning those faults doesn't mean you don't like the thing anymore.
Yes,
It's just being
yes.
honest. And I feel like actually it is more loving, more genuinely loving to be honest.
I agree. I agree.
So,
So I think that when I was a junior in high school and this happened, I might have even been, it was April of 93. I might have been a
mhm.
sophomore in high
Ap-
school. In
April
high school.
19th is the day that,
Right, because that's when Columbine happened as well. And
right.
the Murat building and
Right.
yeah.
Every April 19th becomes a big day.
So I believe, if I recall correctly, that as a sophomore in high school, I completely bought into the narrative of this was a dirty, dangerous cult.
Mhm.
They needed to be destroyed. The good guys tried to destroy them and they murdered them. And like I bought into all of that. Like this is what kids hear and this is what kids believe. And it, 1993, I was 16. I was a kid.
Yeah, and this was so much of the journalistic narrative. There
But
was
it's
very
interesting that somebody in college with, a little bit of learning in
yeah,
terms of
a little
critical
bit
thinking
yeah,
was able
questioned
to
it.
see it differently. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But I still believed, like, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians were bad. I just didn't know
Yes.
if they had to do I didn't know if the government had to do what they did to stop
Right.
bad people.
Right. And let's not forget that I bought the book.
Yes, I know, honey. I was telling Todd this last night.
I, at the time, became very interested in Waco because I was a subversive teen. Like, I
Mhm.
just wanted to do whatever was anti popular. And so, if hearing that Waco, the Branch Davidians were the bad guys, I wanted to like them and know them because
Sure,
that
okay.
was how I operated in the world.
Sure, makes sense.
And so I bought the book Inside the Cult, The Branch Davidians. I probably still have it somewhere. It's a little paperback
That's
cover.
amazing.
And excuse me, it was written by a survivor and his wife, I believe. And I told you the thing I remember from it is David Koresh used to pull his poop out of his butt when he would be constipated.
I know, that's
That was the
that's
lasting impression I had from that book.
it's a level of detail I'm not sure I needed,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm gonna look up who wrote that book while you
Okay.
'cause
It
I'm
was
curious.
not David Thibodeau. I know that.
Okay.
Um, and also, I want to say that I watched the mini series that was out a few years ago that
Yeah,
was
I watched that
really
too.
good.
Yes,
Really good.
with the beloved Taylor Kitsch, who was, Tim Riggins on Friday Night Lights as David Koresh.
Yeah, but he was somebody else. Who was he? Because he was also in that was the dude from, here we go, Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah, there was a lot of good people in it.
Gary Nessner was played by Michael Shannon,
Yes, and he was
who played the FBI agent in
fantastic.
Boardwalk Empire, which was fantastic.
Yes, he was absolutely fantastic in it.
David Thibodeau was played by Rory Culkin. Did you know that?
Mhm,
hmm
mhm.
So there were quite a few people in that miniseries, and I thought that miniseries was really good. It was called Waco Mad Men or Messiah.
Yeah, I really liked it as well.
Madman or
I feel like it
Messiah.
was on early in the pandemic. I feel like I watched that then, but I
I
could be
think you're
wrong.
right. I think
Yeah.
you're right. So
I feel like it was one of the early pandemic binges that everyone was talking about.
who wrote my book?
I can't find your book.
Oh, I'll find it. I had it
Okay.
up not too long ago.
Okay.
Guys, the person who wrote the book that I read was Mark Brault. I don't know if he was the escapee or if he like wrote it with someone else.
Mm. I feel
But
like he
it's
wrote it with
called,
someone else because that name doesn't ring a bell.
yeah, Martin King might have been the guy.
Maybe.
It's called Inside the Cult, a member's chilling exclusive account of madness and depravity in David Koresch's compound. And it's in paperback. And it was published June 1st, 1993.
Wow, so it was real quick.
So it was really quick. And I don't know if this person was in the raid. I don't know if this person like maybe escaped before. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Also, just to show you how good Amazon search is, I searched Waco inside the Branch Davidians because that's what I thought it was called.
hmm
One of the options that came up was Black and Decker, the complete guide to plumbing.
Okay. All right.
So,
There you go.
Amazon, go for it.
So we are covering Waco, American Apocalypse 2023 Netflix. It is 3 episodes. It is, oh, the guy is Taylor Schiller is his name?
Mm-hmm.
Is that his name?
Tiller. It's not
Tiller.
Taylor, it's Tiller. It's
Tiller.
Tiller.
Tiller Russell?
Maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We're on
And
it.
we know him because he is the guy who also did Night Stalker, The Hunt for a Serial Killer, which was amazing.
Yes, that was amazing.
That was fantastic. And he also did, I want to say he also did one of those Manhunt episodes, the one for the Boston bomber, I think.
Okay.
Okay. So he's kind of cult adjacent here.
Okay.
Okay.
This is what he's spending his time documenting, which
Yeah.
is awesome.
And I'm okay
Great.
with that. I'm okay with
Yeah, I'm
that.
totally fine with that.
So we start with what we call in the podcast world the black screen of death.
Mm-hmm.
And it says in 1993, the government served a search warrant against David Koresh for machine guns. What followed was the largest gunfight on American soil since the Civil War.
That is so crazy to think about.
It's crazy to think about. And even Timmy was watching this with me, my husband. He's like, "Is that right?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Yeah, that's right. That's
We
right."
don't do this.
Because we've never had a war in this country
No,
aside from the Civil War and the
we've
Revolution.
not had a war on U.S.
Since
soil
the
since.
Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of our wars, we just go elsewhere and do it.
We
It's
just
safer
rip
that
up
way.
other countries.
That's fine. That's fine.
So we're gonna start episode 1, and I have some key figures here. I have them listed out. David Koresh, obviously. Vernon, what's his real name? Vernon Howell.
Okay. Kathy Vern Troyer, not the right person at all.
Kathy Schroeder,
Mhm.
Branch Davidian, still in it. Still in it.
She's
Heather Jones, her parents were raised in Mount Carmel. She was one of the kids released.
Mhm.
David Thibodeau, a teen who needed attention and found a cult, which would have been me.
Right.
Lee Hancock, Dallas Morning News reporter. I love her. The one with the
Love her
short black
too.
hair.
Yep. I love her glasses.
John Malcolmore, the TV reporter who was kind of on the scene through the whole
Mhm.
thing. Bill Buford from the ATF, bald guy with a goatee. I'm just describing them for you
Yeah,
guys in case
so we
you
can keep
watched
track of who
it.
they are. Yeah.
Jim Kavanaugh, ATF, sweet little grandpa with the blue shirt is his
Mhm.
description from me. Bob Ricks, the FBI special agent in charge with a wild bouffant hairdo.
Yes.
Chris Whitcomb, the crazy sniper on the HRT.
Yeah.
Gary Nessner, a negotiator, and John Cox, a negotiator. Okay, and we'll
I
meet more
love
as
Gary
we go on.
Nessner.
I liked him too.
I love
liked
him.
too.
Now, we talked about that the dramatization that we saw, and he was played by Michael Shannon. He was so good in that. That's where I fell in love with him. I just thought he seemed very. I mean, to be an FBI negotiator, you have to be the calmest, coolest cucumber God ever created.
It is wild, isn't it?
It is a wild job.
So we have the opening montage and we get some information, and we learn that the compound is 77 acres. It's just east of Waco, Texas. It's called Mount Carmel. People say they legit believed David was the son of God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I have to say something.
Oh, God. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Shame. Shame.
David Koresh was a
Shame.
bad man. Okay, he was a bad man
Correct.
by all
Correct.
accounts.
Correct. Uh-oh.
Did I think he was a little cute?
Of course you did. Of course you did. Because he was dirty. He played music. He was charismatic.
I need to be put to sleep. I'm a horrible human.
Here's the thing. What I'm going to say is I hope people take it the right way. I think he was very smart.
He actually, okay, so here's the thing. I listened to his background. I'm sure you did too.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually was kind of an academic dummy.
Mm-hmm.
He failed first grade twice. He dropped out of school. He couldn't get anything right. He was kind of like this fumbly bumbly.
He was also dyslexic.
Yes, and he had a bunch of other issues.
Mm-hmm.
However, like most, if you're I was a teacher for a long time. We know kids learn differently.
Yep.
And he wasn't dumb. He just learned differently. And where this kid shone was with the Bible.
Yeah.
And he picked up that Bible and it was like, phew, he just ran to the top of the class.
I mean, as people talk about, he could recite any word, anytime. He memorized.
They said he was a Bible scholar. That's what
Yeah.
they said about him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I think that, he was misunderstood. He was kind of considered dumb and like a buffoon, and they underestimated him completely.
Is he a complicated historical figure?
Now, he
Like
would
Jackie
make
Overton?
And, after watching this, I regret putting him on my complicated historical figure board
Okay.
because the whole sex with girls thing. Nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
no, he
Nope.
was
You're
there
dead to
was
me,
some
dude.
real,
Hmm.
real gross, dark stuff. I mean, there was a lot of dark stuff happening in there.
So even though I'm like, oh, is he cute? I can't give it to him
He's dead to you
because
with the
yeah,
sex
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay.
Now, would 16-year-old Amy walk into his cult? 110%. I'm at
This
a
is why I
guitar
can't leave
center.
you to
He
your own
comes
devices.
in. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So the followers are talking about how peaceful and loving it was at Mount Carmel, and law enforcement and the FBI and the reporters are saying things like David Koresh was having sex with underage girls. He took all the men's wives. He had 1.6 million rounds of ammunition. They were turning semi automatic weapons into fully automatic weapons. And again, interspliced with that was we were playing outside with our
Mhm.
dads and everything was great. And David loved each of us. And
Right.
then we get, he was a scumbag, he was a con man. It's really interesting
It
how
is.
people can have such divergent views of this man.
Mhm.
So they
And
say
probably
that
both are right.
I know, right? It's
Yeah.
weird. So they say that the core belief system, and this is an offspring of the Seventh Day help me,
Adventist. Seventh-day
Adventists,
Adventists.
who were really like their core belief is end of days,
Yeah.
correct?
It's real apocalyptic Book of Revelations shit
Yeah.
happening there.
Yep.
And he took on the Book of
He
Revelations.
became obsessed with the Book of Revelations,
Yeah.
which I feel like 16-year-old Jenny, my sister, would have
Oh,
done
she would have been
this.
into?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
So they believed the end was coming soon and that they were going to be in battle with the federal government, and that
Yeah.
was how it was going to end.
Right.
Okay.
That was his view of the apocalypse. Other people have we just started watching The Leftovers last night,
Oh
speaking of
God, I love
apocalyptic
that.
stuff.
Yeah, it's
We've
great.
only watched one episode and we're like, "The hell's happening? We need to keep going." But
It's
I
good.
love the kind of, like, apocalyptic thought. I don't love it personally.
Did
I
you
find it
watch The
fascinating.
Silo? Did you watch The
No,
Silo?
not yet. And that's also on our list.
Okay. We see David Koresh, and he's preaching inside the compound. And Kathy tells us that she was always searching for God, and she would just be looking up at the sky, waiting for God to come around, whatever. And when she met David, she found her God.
Mhm.
That was her
She
God.
still believes he was God.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
sad.
At the detriment of her children, which is
Oh,
real sad.
100%. We'll talk about it.
So her and her husband and their kids went to Waco and wanted to live for God.
Mhm.
Heather Jones says both of her parents were raised in Mount Carmel, so she was born into it, which was really interesting. So Mount
Right.
Carmel started
Existed
in
before
the
David Koresh.
30s.
Right.
Hmm. It started in the 30s, and the Branch Davidians, so their offshoot, I guess, was founded in 1955 by a guy named Benjamin Roden.
Mhm.
So, and I guess they had moved locations at that point to the current compound. So anyway, so it's been around long enough that some of these kids are born into it.
Right, because I think we without knowing a lot about it, we assume, like, David Koresh showed up here, built this whole community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think it's easy to forget that it existed before he got there
Yes.
in
Yes.
some form.
So, David Koresh is her uncle. She says the kids played in the yard. It was like having 100 moms. Like it was really a great place to grow up. Kathy says they were living and doing God's will. We learned that David Thibodeau met David Koresh at a guitar center and fell under David Koresh's spell, which, get it.
Mhm. That this is where Amy would have come in.
Yes. Okay. So now we have the ATF attempted siege. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
So Lee Hancock from the Dallas Morning News, again the woman with the short black hair, tells us that David Koresh convinced his followers that he was Christ, and they were going to follow him into a fiery end. They would all die and come back with him as the second coming of Christ. So
As you do.
in order to facilitate this, they start amassing guns.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Kathy says David Koresh always told them the government was coming for them. And they were buying and selling at gun shows. And the followers are like, it's Texas. Guns are like water. Guns are like the air we breathe. Like, this is Texas.
Oh god, do
Also,
you
this
think
is,
Cody could come into this as a gun seller?
oh my God. Oh my God.
We've now come full circle.
This is also after Ruby Ridge.
Right. That's another lens that we have to look through how the government handled this because they did not want another Ruby Ridge.
Now, I will tell you that I don't know much about Ruby Ridge at all.
Okay.
Here's what I know about it, okay, having done no research, because I was
Sure.
young. It was
Right.
92. I was even younger.
Yeah.
Um, the FBI or the government, whatever branch of the government handled that, fucked it up.
Yeah.
There was some guy who had like a bazillion guns and was holed up in his property. They were trying to seize it or arrest him or take him. They shot his wife, I believe,
Yeah. Yeah. It
and it
was
got real
bad.
bad.
It got real bad. So let's just do a real quick here. Ruby Ridge was the site, let me move my thing, of an 11-day siege of a cabin occupied by the Weaver family in Boundary County, Idaho.
Oregon. Oh,
Idaho.
Idaho? I thought it was in Oregon.
Idaho. It was
Okay.
Idaho.
Mhm.
August 1992. It began August 21st when deputies of the U.S. Marshal Service came to arrest Randy Weaver under a bench warrant after his failure to appear on federal firearms charge. During the
Mhm.
surveillance operation, Officer Rick Roderick and Weaver's dog when it ran, or shot Weaver's dog when it ran at them, and then pointed his rifle at Weaver's armed son, Sammy. Sammy then fired at the team, who fired back. Blah, blah, blah. We had the hostage rescue team come in as well. And I really want to say that Gary Gary Nessner was there too.
He was not there.
Okay.
They say that he was there in the miniseries.
Okay,
I
that's why I
just
was
read
thinking it.
this. Yeah,
Okay.
and he wasn't there.
Okay,
That
that's
was
why I
like a
was
little
thinking of
bit
it.
of dramatization, but he
Okay.
wasn't there. Yeah.
But the government was absolutely looking at this through like, we don't want another Ruby Ridge
Correct.
to
Correct.
happen. Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
So, all right, where are we? Okay. So Lee says they were breaking federal laws by modifying guns.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So they also had live grenades, and how they found this was a UPS driver, drivers doing the Lord's work here,
Seriously.
saw a grenade fall out of a package.
Can you imagine? There you are. Well, I mean, it wouldn't have been them, but like there you are with your Amazon boxes of like toilet paper and thing, and then there's a
I
box and a
know.
grenade falls out.
I know. I know.
It's not
And
funny,
they
but it's
tipped
funny.
off the sheriff who called in the ATF.
Hmm.
Okay.
Which is the right thing to do.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't have this.
You can't have people amassing grenades.
No.
Not good.
So Bill Buford is one of the ATF agents who was there. Jim Kavanaugh, Grandpa, blue shirt.
Hmm.
He tells us they had federal search warrants and arrest warrants. Bill Buford says they thought they had, I don't know, 40 to 50 machine guns and a dozen grenades. So
Hmm.
they decided on a dynamic entry. You pull up, you get in the building before any of them have time to arm themselves. It's all based on the element of surprise. It was going to be February 28th, and the ultimate goal was just to arrest David Koresh and seize the weapons. That was the goal. What could go wrong, Amanda?
What could possibly go wrong? And theoretically, if you are the government, again, I don't want to be a US government apologist because I think so much went wrong on every side here. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are believing that they are amassing weapons, this is against the law. This is what you have to do.
Oh, I will say I do not think that the
Yeah, I don't
government was all in the wrong here. And we'll
no,
get into
I don't think
that.
so
There
either.
are
Yeah.
parts where they were, first of all, we'll get into it, but when there's children at harm's
Yeah.
risk, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So they're in this compound, they have all of these children in there, and they have live grenades, they have machine guns, like they had to do something.
What could go wrong?
Now, the podcast I listened to was really interesting. It was the official podcast. You listened to it as well.
Mhm.
Because Tiller brought up the point of why didn't the FBI just arrest him away from the compound?
Right. He
That
did
would have,
leave.
right. He left frequently.
Right.
So why didn't they just arrest him?
At
I
Walmart.
think I think they wanted to get in there because I think they were afraid if they arrested him outside the compound, there was a plan in place, which there
Right.
was.
There was. And they would
There was.
incite them to do more violence.
Yes.
I get it.
So John Malcolmore, a TV reporter, gets this call that this is going down, and the ATF agents were in their undercover house close by, and Rodriguez was one of
Mhm.
these undercover agents, and we met him in the miniseries.
Right. UC house.
Yes, and they were pretending to be college students. It's so bizarre.
I
Okay.
know. It's so crazy.
So that would be like Amanda and me pretending right now to be college students, like,
It's-
whoa, let's go to the club, and like we're home by 10:30. All right. So the followers go and they grab breakfast. Everything's normal. The news crew pulls over on the road and they wait. So John Malcolmore, he's pulled over. He's waiting. He gets a call from one of the photogs who got lost and couldn't find the place.
Mhm.
And he's on the phone with the guy. And the guy, Jim Peeler, who is to blame for a little bit of this,
Yeah.
decides he's going to flag down a passing mailman and ask him, how do I get to that crazy cult place? Because there's an FBI raid going down and I need to be there.
To take the pictures.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, you're unaware that the postman is a member of the crazy cult.
It's Heather Jones' father.
Exactly.
And he runs scoop speed back to Waco and
Right.
immediately tells them.
Sure.
Robert Rodriguez is in there. He's like, oh, Jesus Christ. He's in a Bible study with Koresh when Steve Schneider, Koresh's right-hand guy, comes in. Oh my God, they're coming, blah, blah, blah. Rodriguez thinks he's being made. It's a whole thing. Okay.
Listening to the interview with Robert Rodriguez was really interesting.
Intense.
On how he really ingratiated. I mean, he really went in undercover.
He really did. And one of his, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole here, but one of his things was, one of his undercover specialties was really acclimating to the environment.
Mhm.
And one of his things is he would never call Koresh. He
Right.
always wanted Koresh to call him and invite him in because that's way less obvious.
Yep.
And the one time he had to go in, he said Koresh made him. So,
Yep, they figured
and
it
there
out.
are many accounts that say Koresh knew this was an FBI undercover. Like, he was no dummy.
He figured it all
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
You run a cult, you know how to read people.
That's right.
So Rodriguez gets out and he runs to the undercover house. He calls the ATF. He's like, we're done. We're done. Like, they know you're coming. Element of surprise is gone. The assistant special agent in charge says, nope, we're going in anyway. We're doing it. Now we're doing it faster. We're doing it right now.
Right. Because we can't fuck around anymore because we've now been figured out.
And Bill Buford is like, no. But okay. Like, I have to do what I'm told. I think that's where I have sympathy for the agents involved, because these agents are just doing what they're told.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of like soldiers in the military.
Yeah. They're
Like, they do what they're told for what they believe is the betterment of this country, and
Right.
you can't hold it against them.
No, they are following the mission. They are completing the mission
Yep.
with which they have been charged.
Mm-hmm.
What I think was really interesting, and I'm sure you'll go down this rabbit hole, is how uncoordinated each of these groups were, and that's the problem.
Yes, that's the problem. Okay, so Bill's like, we lost the element of surprise. We're doomed. Whatever. Now we see helicopters approaching the compound. And Bill basically is like, this was going to be a fucking bloodbath, and we knew it. Like, this going in, he said 2 truckfuls of agents were coming in with the tarp over them.
Oh, Jesus.
And he said they had on flak jackets and helmets and basically raid gear. And they were all squeezing one another's hands because they kind of knew they were going into what could be a fatal situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that?
No. So Jim Kavanaugh's like, this was real dumb, because when we got there, like, if you looked at the compound, they had the high ground. They had a tower. They had, all these areas that were real bad for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, this was a dumb thing to do. Thibodeau claims that David Koresh was all calm, and he just planned on going out and chatting to the agents. He was just going to go out and be like, hey, what's up, guys?
Have a little
me,
chitty
DK.
chat.
Yeah.
It's me, DK.
So Bill says they were squeezing each other's hands. Okay, then he says David Koresh sticks his head out and tells them to get off his property. And we do see him.
Mm-hmm.
And they say they have a warrant, and he slams the door. Thibodeau says David was like, here's what David did. He went down and he opened the door and he said, oh, hey guys, wait, there's women and and he didn't even get children out, and they started just shooting at him randomly.
Right.
Now, we don't know who shot first. The military, listen to me. The law enforcement says that the Brand Davidians did. The Brand Davidians say law enforcement. That may never be solved.
No.
We don't know who did.
No.
I don't feel comfortable saying who did. You probably don't feel
either.
comfortable saying who did.
No. So
we don't know. I will guarantee you it did not go down like that. Like David Thibodeau is saying.
There are children. Come on.
David Thibodeau, he's a complicated historical.
He's a complicated historical. I find it fascinating.
Okay. So Bill says, we absolutely did not shoot first. In fact, we heard the M60 and the 50 caliber first, and we didn't have those weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Jim says, well, we knew the warrant was good because we heard those machine guns.
Right. I mean, that's the proof. If there was any question, the fact that all of a sudden these people are, the Branch Davidians are shooting people with automatic weapons proves that
Yeah, I
they were
agree.
breaking the law.
So Jim says, it gets, let me back up. This is all unseen footage. We've never seen this before. It's unaired. It is real bad. I mean, there is
So
just
bad.
25 minutes of shooting.
Yeah.
It literally gave me anxiety watching the entire thing.
It was terrifying.
The news reporters are in the middle of it.
Uh-huh.
Like, they're running interference. They're trying to, they're yelling and helping the ATF, and it is wild.
It is complete chaos that went off the rails so fast.
And it becomes pretty evident pretty quickly that the ATF has to retreat.
Mm-hmm.
They have to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote, the footage is super intense. Bill walks us through it. And it's interesting having Bill walk us through it because he's like, there I am right there with the red stripe on my helmet.
Yeah.
There I am, like we see him, which is wild. They try to go in the windows. They're shot. They're shooting people in the windows. Heather says David Koresh's wife was shot in front of her. She's crying about it. David Koresh took fire.
Mm-hmm.
The ATF gets out of there after they manage to call a ceasefire. So we hear this audio of this ATF agent who is down.
Yeah.
And he's bleeding out and it's really bad. And he's begging them to come and get him and save him. And they can't. They can't get anywhere near him until they get a ceasefire. So like, they're working frantically on getting this ceasefire. They get it. They get to him. They manage to save his life somehow. If you could see these guys, if you haven't watched this, you need to watch this
It's
because
so good.
seeing them and then hearing Tiller uses the White Buffaloes Wish It Was True right over the top of this, which is perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
It's really powerful.
It's
And
really
these men are
powerful.
crying about it 30 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. And they didn't have enough vehicles or ambulances to get these guys out of there. They put Bill Buford on the hood of Jim John McLemore's
Car.
news van.
Yeah.
And he's driving without being able to see. Somebody is like navigating. It's wild. The retreat is wild. So the TV guy, the photog, hides the tape and smuggles it out of there while they're being screamed at. This footage hits the news. And what people hear is 4 law enforcement people are dead and 12 are injured. 4 federal agents are dead and 12 are injured. We have no idea how many Branch Davidians are dead.
No,
Nobody gives a shit or says anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Nope. Okay, so the question then becomes who shot first.
Right.
There are like 3 central questions around Waco. Who shot first? Who lit the fires? And what was happening in that compound?
Yeah.
And I think we have pretty good answers on what was happening in the compound.
Yes.
I think I have an opinion of who started the fires.
I have an opinion too.
But I don't think we know who shot first. I don't think we know.
I don't think we do either.
So the FBI is now called in because 4 federal agents were killed in this raid, and they're required to investigate the murder of federal agents. So Ricks says that Ricks is kind of a dick. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not a fan. He says the ATF requested help from the FBI in the form of negotiators and the HRT. The HRT is the hostage rescue team. I'm thinking it's like a Navy SEAL situation.
I think it's the best of negotiators and people who know how to get people out of sticky situations.
Yeah, and don't forget, this is the unit that was at Ruby Ridge. I don't know if this exact unit was
these were the same people, but it was the same organization.
Same organization. So they are the absolute last resort for the government in a hostage situation. So you're being held hostage. The HRT is, if they can't save you, you're fucked. You're done.
Right. We're starting with negotiators, and then if that doesn't work, we go in.
So Jim Kavanaugh at the ATF begins the negotiations with Koresh.
Mhm.
And David Koresh, they learn pretty quickly, just wants press and he wants media and he wants to get his word out.
Yep.
He wants to be on TV.
He's God. He believes he's God and he wants to be on TV so he can send his message to the world.
Yep. So he was demanding the local media play a message from him, and each time they played it, he would release 2 kids, 2 by 2.
Mhm.
They do this for a couple hours. We see Scott and Chrissy, they're Kathy's kids. Jim said they considered law enforcement to be evil, so the moms releasing these kids to quote unquote Babylon, sending them out into the nightmare.
Utterly terrifying.
The
I
moms
feel
were
awful for these parents.
I do too. I do too. Especially somebody like Heather Jones who just grew up in this.
Right. She didn't know anything else. Her parents
Mm-mm.
grew up in it. Like, they knew nothing else.
Nothing else. So the moms were like kind of pissed at David Koresh. They were like, we don't want to send them out there. So Jim Kavanaugh comes up with this idea that you send the kids out, they'll come right to me, and I'll
Mhm.
put them on the phone with you and the moms.
Yep.
This was his
I'll
thing,
show you right away that they're okay.
which was brilliant.
Yeah.
So Kathy says it was hard, but they did believe in she did believe in David, so she did it. The kids go to Jim, the kids call David Koresh, we hear the recordings and they play them for Kathy and she listens and tells us, what was going through their heads. She said, "We didn't think, like it's hard to look at this. This is from Kathy. It's hard to look at this and think, how could you not want to save your kids?"
Mhm.
She said, "But that's not what we saw it as.
Right.
We saw it as we had to get David's message out and sacrificing our kids was just the way to do it."
Mhm.
And you're like, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, that's indoctrination and brainwashing
Yeah.
to such an extreme level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you are doing this and what you think you're doing is the right thing for your children,
Yeah.
even if it's just wild.
It's
It's
wild.
wild.
And she said, "We didn't care about living. I cared about living for God." We need
I
eyes
found
on
that
this.
line
We need eyes on
fascinating.
this woman in current day because I'm worried. Where is
She's
she?
she is a fascinating person.
And so now we have a new negotiator. Jim's exhausted, but also they had to transition from the ATF to the FBI. So they bring in Gary Nessner, and he is the
Mhm.
one who was played by Michael Shannon in the miniseries. And Jim says the ATF and the FBI are like bros, but we do fight, but we have each
Mhm.
other's back generally. So Gary takes over. He's very complimentary to Jim. Jim did a great job, but
Mhm.
get out and let the big boys play, he
Right.
says.
Let the person who's trained to do this do
Hmm.
this.
And Gary Nessner, I guess, was the head of everything and wouldn't normally be on the phone, but he had nobody else there.
Mhm. He just was the first one who got there and it was like, "Okay, I guess I'm doing this."
Yep. So they know David Koresh is shot.
Mhm.
We know that he's agitated with the switch. We hear the recordings. We hear all these recordings.
Yeah, which is fascinating.
Fascinating.
And I get it because like he and Jim had built a rapport, and now from David Koresh's perspective, he has
He's
some
going back
stranger
on
on
it.
that he has no trust of.
Yep. So, Sniper Chris, who is, I don't know, ready to smash some skulls, is what I'm feeling. That's the vibe I'm getting from him.
He's a little aggro.
He says there was no perimeter around Mount Carmel. Did you hear the interview with him where he talked about how he went through like every religion
Mhm.
and even like tried out David Koresh's religion to
Yeah,
see
tried
if
everything.
yeah,
Judaism. 'Cause he was raised Catholic,
he
realized that
tried
didn't work.
Mormonism. He tried everything.
Mormonism.
Yeah.
All of them.
And
And
he
then was
landed
like
on
I was
atheist.
right. He said he was agnostic for a while and then he was like, "No, nothing."
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
So he says one of the problems is there was no perimeter around Mount Carmel. We had no eyes on the back of the place. We had no idea what was going on, and that was dangerous.
Mhm.
So we found we were in an abandoned farmhouse a mile away, and that we had a good picture of the front. But he says, it was crazy because there was like this large structure just in the middle of nothing.
Mhm. And think about like the difference in technology. Today, that thing would be covered in drones.
Oh,
They'd have eyes
100%.
they'd have eyes on every square inch of that property.
100%.
30
Mm-hmm.
years ago, we didn't have that.
Mm-mm. Hey everyone, stay tuned. Little Miss Recap will be right back after these words. So in the first few days, they got 20 people out. Most of them were kids. David Koresh said he would come out, and his followers, if they gave him a national broadcast. He makes a 58-minute sermon, and he wanted it on the Christian Broadcasting Network. I'm like, dude,
If you
Amos,
really,
NBC, come on, do
yeah, if you
something.
want to get your word out, we're going ABC, NBC, CBS.
So they play it, and he could have even, what year was this? 93? They could have put on QVC. It would have got more viewers, I bet.
That's true.
So they play it, and he says he'll come out peacefully and immediately. And then Koresh would come out first, and everyone else. And then last would be Steve Schneider. Kathy says coming out meant giving up everything you believe.
Mm-hmm.
And Thibodeau says, we honestly thought if we came out, they would shoot us. Now they're talking to David Koresh, and he begins to stall. And he's like, I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. I got to put Steve on the phone. So Steve gets on the phone. He's like, oh my God, Gary. Turns out God wants us to wait. Oh, wait, David's getting a call from God. Hold on. Oh, I'm back. Yeah, God said we got to wait. We got to wait this out. The FBI's like, what the fuck, dude?
David's on the God phone right now. I'll let you know what the message is when we're done.
So they were not coming out. Episode 2 starts with Jeff Jamar. He is the FBI head dude, and he's giving a press conference. And he's saying they want no bloodshed, that 20 children, 47 women, and 43 men were still inside at this point. Ricks says, we now know this will not turn out well, and that David Koresh is controlling everyone. And they're saying this all based on the fact that he will not come out.
Right.
And if he comes out, this is over.
Mm-hmm.
If he comes out, says, I'm coming out, it's over. David Koresh says no one believed in Christ either. He had to die for them to believe him.
Right. Right.
Now, Sniper Chris says this amped up their plans. They needed to secure the perimeter now because now they know Koresh is not coming out. He's not playing with them. He's not cooperating. They decided to set up this abandoned garage behind the property, but they had to drive past the compound to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're rolling through there in fucking tanks and shit. And David Koresh is not happy about this. Right. He's on the phone going like, what are you doing?
Right. Why are there tanks showing up?
And the negotiators are like, what is happening?
Right. This is where it starts falling apart.
This is where it starts falling apart.
Coordination between ATF, the FBI, the HRT. There's no head dog in charge.
Right. You need a head dog in charge.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Department of Justice is, so this is why Janet Reno was lambasted to hell.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the beginning of these two arms of the same agency undermining one another. David Koresh is on the phone with Gary, freaking out that these vehicles are surrounding the property. Gary knows nothing about it. The HRT finally secures the garage. They have a perimeter. Now, at this point, Kathy says, and this is what leads me to believe the Brand Davidians started the fire.
Okay.
That's my belief.
I believe they started it too.
Kathy says, we had a plan to commit suicide if they entered the building.
Yep.
I had a grenade, and we all did. And we also know part of what's not talked about in this documentary, and they could have put this in very easily, is that the FBI had been sending in recording devices all along. Mm-hmm. They were sending them in milk cartons. They were sending them in deliveries. So that's where we're getting all that audio that's inside. That's not over the telephone.
It's not over the phone, yeah.
And they had heard them, and they played the tapes. They had heard them talking about having kerosene, having hay, being ready to set the place on fire if something happened. Yeah. Also, I read a thesis by a student who did their doctorate on this.
Okay.
And they did all the Freedom of Information Act stuff to get all the recordings released. And they said they 100% started the fire, the Brand Davidians.
Okay. I believe they did.
Yeah, I believe they did. So Ricks says the HRT just wanted to get in there and get it done. And we wanted to establish trust and take time.
Mm-hmm.
But the HRT saw David Koresh and his followers as criminals and murderers. Now, Jeff Jamar was hearing a gentle approach from Gary and a harder and more aggressive approach from the HRT. And he was often siding with the HRT and letting them do what they want. Why? Because this was costing a lot of fucking money.
Uh-huh. And every day, I remember seeing the news every day that this just ticked on, look way worse for the federal government. Yeah. They're like, we can't hit 30 days of this. We can't hit 40 days of this. Like, this has got to stop. 'Cause it
Sniper
makes us look
Chris,
weak. It makes the federal government look really weak.
100%. I don't, we'll talk about it at the end. Hold on.
Okay.
Because I don't think he would ever have come out.
Mm-mm, I don't think
That's
so
my,
either.
I mean, he said he had to write a book.
Yeah, he was very
Okay.
busy.
So Sniper Chris says, we had the same goal. And he brings up a good point here. He says it's a completely different mindset when you're used to busting into a place, securing it, and getting everybody out, as opposed to spending time with people, earning their trust, trying to get them to
Mhm.
change their mind. He says it's a different mindset.
The goal is the same. The way you
Yes.
get to the goal is vastly different.
Yes. So we see footage of Gary telling the other negotiators, we can't pay attention to what's going on out there. We
Mm-mm.
need to focus on Koresh and us, and that's it. We're ignoring the HRT, we're ignoring whatever. All right. So the negotiators now are taking the stance of like, we're trying to separate ourselves from the
Mhm.
men in the backyard with the guns pointed at you. Gary tells us David is hurt, he's been shot, and we see video of him showing the bullet holes. The next tactic was they wanted to convince him that he needed medical attention. So they told him, they showed the video to a doctor. And the doctor's like, oh, that looks infected. Now, who'd they
Right.
show it to? Doc Baker? I mean, come on. Well, you might die, you might not. We don't know. Time will tell.
Who was the doc so we've got doctor on a Little House. Who was the doctor on the Love Boat?
Oh,
Doc.
Doc. Yeah,
Doc,
just
yeah.
Doc. He was
Both
not a
of
real
them.
fucking doctor either. No.
Of course not.
So Kathy says he was 33 and shot up. So there was a lot of similarities between him and Christ. You know, because when Christ was shot up.
Right. I mean, he
Mhm.
was that time's version of shut up. And they were
Yeah.
both 33.
Okay. So Gary's like, we're rooting for him to die at this point or to come out for medical assistance. Like, that's what
Mhm.
needed to happen. Now Thibodeau's mom, Belinda, shows up and she's pleading to talk with David, her son, David, not David Koresh.
Right.
But she says the FBI won't let her do that. And they have a strict policy against that. And I kind of get it.
I kind of get
They're
it
like,
too.
we don't want to give them things. They need to understand they can only go through us.
Right.
That's how the trust is built.
Exactly. And then
So,
that becomes a carrot to dangle.
yes.
You want to talk to your family? Your mom is right here.
Mm-hmm.
You come out, your mom is right here waiting for you.
Yep. So she confronts, and they didn't know that what this woman would say to him.
Mm-mm. No, and that's the other thing.
Mm-hmm. So she confronts Ricks at a press conference. Media coverage is really heating up over this. Now everybody's into it.
I loved her at the press conference.
Me too.
Yeah.
The FBI is doing research on David Koresh, and they find an ex-girlfriend who says he had a, quote, breakdown in 1979 and had hallucinations and he was talking to God.
Oh, good. Nothing ever goes wrong there.
I don't know if we learned this or if I did outside research on this, but he had a rough upbringing. We learned it in the doc, I think. He dropped out of school. He was abused. He came to the Branch Davidians as a young, quiet, kind of goofy guy, and he befriends Lois Rodin. And Lois Rodin was the wife of Benjamin Rodin, the founder who had died. So
Right.
she was at least 50 years older than him, and he seduces her and starts banging her.
Oh, God.
Which is a
He's-
baller move. I have to say, you go in there and you just bang the oldest, most powerful person.
That's a baller move.
So when she dies, her son and David Koresh fight for leadership, okay? He gathers up a posse and he tries to kill the son.
Mhm.
And he admits this on tape. He's like, we were shooting at him just to scare him. Okay?
Some of this is not funny. It's ludicrous is the reason I'm
It's
laughing.
ludicrous. George was slightly injured, so David Koresh gets arrested for attempted murder, and it was a hung jury. So he gets off.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, in 1992, a current affair did an expose on the Branch Davidian. So the FBI gets the tape and like the raw footage and everything, and they're watching it. Do you remember a current affair?
Oh, I sure do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Zoom with that big like triangle. Zoom.
Yep.
Yep.
It showed that David Koresh had a revelation that he needed to take the other wives. Okay,
Mhm.
so David Koresh and his followers and everyone who escaped kind of talk about this. This is verified as much
Mhm.
as it could be. And David Koresh admits it on tape that he had a 14-year-old wife.
Yep.
Whose parents, her name was Rachel, whose parents gave permission for her to be married to him at 14. Way to go, parents.
Yeah. That's
And
quality
that
parenting there.
then one day he decided he wanted to also be married to her 12-year-old sister. So that happened.
As you
Then
do.
he decided that he needed to start sleeping with everybody's wife
Mm-hmm.
and that the men could not have sex.
Right. He's the only one. And
Yeah.
everyone becomes his wife.
And let me tell you something. There are a lot of things, that are putting the pressure. This is turning into a pressure cooker.
Uh-huh.
You have a bunch of men around who can't bang their wives, who can't, you know what I mean?
Or watching their wives bang this guy, literally or figuratively. Like Kathy gets pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing that would have turned me into a monstrous rage and had me become a crazy cult member, David Koresh has the only air conditioning in the building.
Oh, fuck no.
So no one has running water, no one has electricity, and now David Koresh has the only air conditioning. Oh, I'm sorry, he has electricity. He has the air conditioning. Yeah. Yep.
No.
So yeah,
That would be where I'm done.
that'd be
I
a deal
can't be
breaker
hot.
for me. I'd be running out there with my arms up in the air. Take me. I'm
Exactly. Come
yours,
here.
FBI.
Get air conditioning quickly. It's hot here. It's fucking Texas, man. It's hot.
Now we have the breakdown of communication. There's a 50 caliber weapon pointed at Sniper Christ, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, not Christ. Sniper
No.
Christ, I just called him. New
Sniper
character
Christ.
alert.
Sniper Christ would have been like a grunge band in the 90s. Can you see that? Sniper
That
Christ
would
out
have
of
been David
Seattle?
Koresh's band name, I think. Sniper.
Hashtag band name.
So the head of the HRT calls the negotiators and he's like, David Koresh is pointing a 50 caliber weapon. I don't know anything about guns, but this
I don't
50
either.
caliber weapon sounds real bad.
I don't know. I don't know anything either, but it's bad.
Yeah. And they're like, get him to put it down. And David Koresh is on the phone saying, I don't know what you're talking about. It's a whole thing. So what happens is the negotiators get David Koresh to stand down,
Mm-hmm.
but the HRT then is pissed because they've lost sight of the 50 caliber now. I don't know what they wanted them to do then.
I don't either.
Me either.
This
Sniper
all felt real
Christ, you
janky.
need to get your shit together.
Sniper Christ, get it together, man. Come on.
So now there's a back and forth on day 10 with Koresh saying, I have something that could blow your vehicles 50 feet in the air. So the FBI brings in huge armored vehicles now.
Right. You can't blow those in the air as easily.
And the rhetoric is getting real heated. David Koresh is releasing tapes of kids saying God is going to destroy our enemies. It's real bad.
It is.
Okay, now a key mistake is made. Okay, the FBI could point to like 3 things that really turn this sideways. The negotiators decide to send in a tape of the released kids playing in a group home. And Kathy sees her kid, Brian, looking upset.
Yeah.
I need eyes on Brian currently.
I do too. What is Brian's life like right now? Is Brian with his mom? Like, what's happening?
He looked upset, and the reason why his brothers and sisters, Kathy's ex-husband came down and was like, give me my fucking kids. I'm out of here.
Right. So he lost his brothers and sisters.
So he's all by himself.
Right. I think he would not have been nearly as upset if he'd been with his siblings.
Right. And yeah. So they lure her out with Brian, and when they get her out, they fucking arrest her.
I know.
And Gary is irate.
Uh-huh.
He's like, people inside are watching what is going to happen to them when they come out, and you're throwing them in jail, you idiots.
Right. They let her see her kid for a minute, and then they arrest her.
David
I'm not
Koresh
saying
is
Kathy.
irate.
I'm not saying Kathy shouldn't have been arrested like that. But if you're, or I'm not saying she should or shouldn't have been arrested. I have no comment on that for that.
She should not have been arrested, in my opinion. Yeah. Stupid.
But this fucked everything up.
And I'm only saying that because I want leniency when I eventually fall into a cult and I have to come out. I can't be arrested.
I'll make sure you're not arrested.
So
if you get shot, though, I will make sure the iPad is in the.
Please do. Please do. So Sniper Christ now tells us that one night at 2 a.m., he had the opportunity for a headshot on David Koresh. And he could have taken him out right there. And he would have went to jail. And I wrote, would he have, though?
I don't think
you're a white dude in law enforcement. Would you have gone to jail?
After this 40-day siege or whatever?
Probably not. Not saying he should have done it. I'm just saying.
No, I'm glad he didn't do it because we do not want our government shooting us with impunity.
Don't tell us that you would have gone to jail because that is not a certainty.
No.
He says, but I would have saved lives. Okay.
And
so
he's
now
not wrong.
Episode 3 comes up. So Dick DeGuerin, shows up. Okay. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he also defended Robert Durst. This guy's got a real good history of picking them. He's hired to represent Koresh by Bonnie Haldeman, Koresh's mom. And the FBI decides, okay, we're going to work together here. You want him out, we want him out. Dick DeGuerin wants nothing more than David Koresh in a courtroom. He says it so many times, I think he's getting a little chub over it. He's like, I want you in the courtroom. Like, what do you want to do to him in the courtroom? I don't know what's happening.
Well, if you think about it, if you're like somebody who's like this nationally famous defense attorney or wanting to be one, you want to get the biggest story that all America's talking about all day, every day.
True.
In the courtroom.
True. Well, he failed. So the FBI claims, we're going to put you on the phone with them. We're not going to listen in, but they're 100% listening in. It's like, here, you pretend you do the two-way conversation. Okay. You're Dick DeGuerin talking to David Koresh. Go ahead.
So, David, what I want you to do is when they ask you to send out children.
That's what it was like. But come on, dude.
Yeah, you hear the beep of the recording.
You can hear. Did you ever watch the special about the mafia tapes when they did, what is that called? How they brought them down? The RICO Act?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? And the FBI agents are sitting there like chain smoking, listening. That's what you hear. Okay, anyway. So they're listening. And David Koresh tells Dick that he was willing to go in and talk with the FBI, but the FBI did not want any part of it. And Dick DeGuerin's like, I don't know, he sounds reasonable to me. David Koresh sounds like a normal dude to me. And he's like, I think I could get him out. So everybody's like, okay, Dick DeGuerin, new hero.
Okay. Hey, everything else we've done thus far has failed, so let's give you a shot.
Bring him in. On March 21st, a bunch of people get released, and Gary says, our strategy was starting to work. We had Dick DeGuerin assuring David Koresh he was not going to go to jail. Right. We had, the HRT seemed to be a little quiet for a while. And then all of a sudden, for no fucking reason, the HRT starts driving tanks over David Koresh's classic cars.
I know. Like, what the fuck?
I will tell you, just being married to a car guy, this is the equivalent of like killing your child in the street.
I know. You can't do that.
Gary Nessner's like, what is the rationale here?
Right. He's so angry. And I think he has a right to be so angry.
Ricks is like, this was one of the hardest days because we thought people were coming out, but David Koresh got real mad at us.
Yeah.
So now Jeff Jamar tells Gary they needed to speed this up because it's costing like $1 million a day. And, we don't have any money.
Got time for this.
Okay.
Right.
So they're ratcheting the pressure up now. And this is where we see them blasting the music and bizarre sounds 24/7. David Thibodeau says they had the phone off the hook, for like 48 hours straight. And there's kids in there.
I can't think of how absolutely mind numbing that has to be.
Well, I will tell you that Gary says aggravation and deprivation techniques undermine everything we are trying to do. And also probably hurt children psychologically.
Sure.
But the HRT unilaterally decided to do this, he says. And they're playing this shit at 130 decibels, which is real loud.
That's way louder than my hairdryer when my Apple Watch yells at me.
Oh, okay.
Because quite often I'll listen to a podcast while I'm drying my hair. And then my watch is like, you're in a loud environment.
So would your watch be going off if you were in the compound?
Oh, yes. Yes. A concert.
It'd be like, your body heat is 110. Get in that air conditioning.
Yeah,
you know what?
You're a lady of a certain age without air conditioning. This is not going to work.
You would have to try to bang Koresh just to get into the air-conditioned tower.
Worth it.
So you'd have to do the Kathy, she describes it like a Bible study.
Yes. We'll call that Bible study. Okay. They were having sex and he was doing Bible study the whole time.
What a
Bible
turn-on.
study.
Okay.
It's gonna get me into a tizzy real quick.
So Thibodeau says, we're all mentally unstable and you're trying to make us more mentally unstable?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Gary's pissed and they get rid of him. They ship him off. Gary, you're done here. Psh, get out. Now they send Dick DeGuerin in again. And HRT is against this. FBI is just trying to, hang on here. And Thibodeau's like, we really thought Dick DeGurban would save us. Like, our rights were being trampled on.
Mm-hmm.
Were they?
Were
I
they?
mean, you can't have that amount of ammunition.
No, you can't be, squirreling away a lot of grenades.
No, and you can't be banging underage kids. So there's that.
That's the bigger problem. Well, that's not the bigger problem. That's a very big problem.
So Dick DeGurban says he went in there and he wasn't worried about the Brand Davidian shooting him. He was worried the snipers would shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it stunk in there like sewage and garlic.
I'm curious about the garlic piece.
They said they were using it as a homeopathic cure.
Right, on David's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He told David, I want to get you in court. Oh, I want to get you in court, baby. I want to bend you over the defendant's. Like, what?
Wow.
Okay.
That took a turn.
He said he had been told by God. David said now that he had been told by God that it was his mission to write his interpretation of the book of Revelations. And I'm taking my time.
Mhm.
And as someone who's been under pressure to get out a manuscript, I totally relate to this.
Yeah.
If I could have held the country hostage while I was writing Fat Girl Skinny, I would have. Don't rush me.
Right.
So it's day 48, and people who are into gun rights and militia people show up, and we see Timothy McVeigh. And he's selling anti-government bumper stickers.
Sure is.
Sure is. Now the press is waiting for David Koresh to finish his manuscript. And everybody's just sitting around like, talk about fucking pressure. The entire country's waiting for you to finish your manuscript.
Right.
And Ricks is like, this might be another stalling tactic. And Dick DeGurban's like, no. He's really writing the book of Revelation. Give him time. He's handwriting it. So Steve Schneider tells the negotiators that all the tanks and shit are really fucking with David's creative process. Like, what are you doing?
You're a writer. I've written. You can't have tanks there. That's not going to help you.
Finally, Riggs is like, okay, I've had enough of this.
We're done.
This noise. We're done. So Dick Roberts, the head of the HRT, goes to meet with Janet Reno. And Reno has to be the one to say, okay, you could use tear gas.
Mm-hmm.
Lee says they should have shown Janet Reno the videos with David Koresh being sweet with the kids and being gentle. But they didn't show her that. I'm like, but he's banging them.
Right.
It's not okay.
No, it's not okay.
So Janet Reno was going off of the evidence that she had, which was the file, including a lot of testimony from former members who said there were definitely child sexual abuse happening.
Mm-hmm.
So Reno gives the order. April 19th, 1993, the FBI calls Steve Schneider inside. This is horrific. I just want to say this.
Yeah.
But there's also a little element of absurdity to this part that made me want to chuckle.
Okay.
But I can't.
Okay.
And that is the FBI heading towards you in a tank screaming, this is not an assault. I'm like,
is it?
So they call Steve Schneider and they're like, this is not an assault. We're not entering the building, but we're tear gassing the fuck out of you. And Steve Schneider goes, this is not an assault. And he hangs up.
As someone who has actually been tear gassed, it's not fun.
You've been tear gassed?
Yes.
Oh, God. Were you in the library too late?
No, my dorm was tear gassed. So I went to the University of Delaware. And I lived on Christiana Towers, if anyone knows anything about the University of Delaware, 16-story dorm apartment type thing. And it was the Thursday before Thanksgiving, and some kid got really pissed off as he was studying that the people in the hall were being loud. Ooh. And so he had stolen military tear gas from Aberdeen Proving Ground and set it off.
Wow. So you weren't tear gassed by law enforcement. You were tear gassed by... like
fellow student.
A motherfucker trying to cause trouble.
A motherfucker trying to cause trouble.
Wow. Okay.
It's a whole story.
Were your eyes burning? Did your skin fall off? What happened?
My skin absolutely did not fall off, but my eyes were burning. So, college dorms, like fire alarms are going off all the fucking time, right? Because kids are assholes. So my roommate and I, we lived on the 14th floor, and we had made a decision that every other fire alarm, one of us would go down because we're like, this is so
make sure
dumb.
nobody's on fire. Yeah.
Right. And so the fire alarm went off, and my roommate, Cecily, was like, your turn. I was like, Okay. So I like go to put pants on and I breathe in and all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh fuck. Cecily, this is not a joke. Like
Ugh.
get going." Ran out without a bra on,
Mm.
grabbed my car keys, didn't have my wallet,
Mm-hmm.
nothing. Um and we were out of our dorms, we were out of our rooms for 5 days before they could let us back in.
Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah, I mean, we were running down the stairwell, people were throwing up, people were passing out.
Where did they put you up is my question
Oh, they didn't
for the
really.
5 days.
So,
You just couldn't come back.
the first night a bunch of us went to a hotel room
Okay.
and just shared a hotel. This is like 2 in the morning, so we just
Mm-hmm.
went and did that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were putting people up, like, there was a commons between the 2 towers, so they were putting, like, cots and stuff in there, but all of us were like, this
No.
doesn't work." If I'd known it had been 5 days, I just would have gone home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I live 45 minutes from school. But I slept on my friend Vanessa's floor for a couple of days. My
Mm,
roommate had a boyfriend. She stayed in his
mm,
dorm.
mm.
And then we told our parents we needed all new bedding because
Of course.
they
Yes.
told us we had to have it.
Okay.
So we went shopping and got new bedding.
I would be like, "Can I tell my parents I need to stay at, like, the Four Seasons? Like, I don't wanna."
Very traumatized. Well, I mean, there really was no Four Seasons in Newark, Delaware. So
I will tell you that I could never at this age sleep on a floor.
yeah, yeah.
Oof. In my 20s, yeah. In my
Oh, my
30s,
20s,
yeah.
I did all the
Mhm.
time. But
Yep. Okay, so they're getting tear gassed, and we have audio from the inside, and we hear people screaming, "Everybody grab your masks." Like, they were ready for this.
mhm.
Sniper Christ says the plan was to insert the gas very gently. I'm just going to bust a hole into your house. Bink! And put a little canister of gas in there that will eventually turn flammable, but
Right,
whatever.
and fill up the
Mhm.
whole house, that's fine.
So he says, but here's the thing. We were ready for a fight because we assumed they would fight their way out of this.
Mhm.
Over the speakers, Doug, we're placing gas in the building. This is not an assault. We are not assaulting you. But come the fuck out right now. We're going to gas you to death, motherfuckers. But this is
But
not an
not
assault.
it's not funny, it's absurd.
So they're busting holes in the building. They're putting tear gas in. Thibodeau says they hurt. Thibodeau says. Thibodeau again. I feel like he
Mhm.
is just crying out for attention.
I just think he's a
We
fascinating character. I don't like him, I just find him fascinating.
we heard 40 millimeter ferret rounds. And so, okay, so Thibodeau says we heard ferret rounds being shot around us. Okay.
Mhm.
Now so the director puts audio in to kind of confirm nor debunk this. And I feel like he debunks this a little bit because we can't have audio inside of some guy going, "What's that sound?" And everybody's like, "Tear gas." He's like, "What's that sound?" Tear gas. Nobody says it's a bullet.
No, no.
Nobody says there's a gun.
Mm-mm.
Nobody says shooting. So that could have applied to anything. They were busting holes in the sides of the house. That's what the sound was.
Right, exactly. It wasn't
Yeah.
being shot at, it was
Well,
rams.
there's two pivotal moments that they do this, that they
Mhm.
rely on audio. So Rix says as soon as they started doing this, the Branch Davidians started firing. Now that's what Rix says.
Right.
Dick DeGurbin is going, "I'll go in there." He calls up, "I'll go in there. I'll go in there with the tear gas."
Right,
They're like, "We're fucking done with you. We're done."
right. You haven't gotten us what we need here. We're
Mm-mm.
done. Bye.
The sun comes up now, and we see footage of the tanks kind of destroying the buildings. And there's also a bunker. So they need to go through the front door to insert the tear gas into the bunker because the bunker is
Mhm.
an internal structure. So Thibodeau's like, when the tanks start coming through your front door, you know you're gonna die. And
Shit's going down.
at a news conference, Rix is like, "I think they're coming out today, and we're done negotiating. They come out or
Mhm.
they don't. Oh, whatever."
Right.
Sniper Christ says he sees flames and it's on fire, and he says it's heavy fire, and he says that the fire started in two areas that are like not downwind of each other.
Right.
Okay. The overhead surveillance, which is the FLIR video, shows the fire breaking out simultaneous at three separate locations, and there are no tanks near those locations. That's
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
The news is watching and waiting, and they're like, "Nobody's fucking coming out. What's going
Right.
on? Ricks says the fires were 100% started by the Branch Davidians. Sniper Christ says they're lighting the place on fire. Thibodeau says not true. No one ever spoke of starting a fire. And Ricks says David Thibodeau is a liar who knows the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we do have audio. Here it is. This is where they use audio to confirm or debunk what he's saying.
Right.
There's audio of the Branch Davidians saying they're pouring gasoline over hay.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting the fires.
They're starting the fires.
They had a suicide pact.
Yeah. They weren't coming out of this alive.
No. So everyone just kind of sat there and watched. There's no running water inside, so nobody can get these fires out.
Right.
Thibodeau says, I was just seeing fireballs flying around. One of the mothers is outside with Thibodeau's mom, like in their hotel or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
She has, I thought it said her 2 daughters and granddaughters were inside. Definitely 1 daughter.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact.
And her granddaughters. And she's like watching them die. I was heartbroken for these mothers.
It's so heartbreaking.
David Thibodeau sees a window and a hole, and he runs out with 2 others, and he's out, he says, for about a minute, and you see the building explode. Sniper Christ says, we're still waiting, and nobody's coming out. And he's like, it's crazy. Then he claims someone tried to shoot him. Like, okay, Sniper Christ, take a seat. The whole place is like burning to the ground. Nobody's taking a shot at you.
No, they got bigger problems.
Mm-hmm. So the reporters are like, where's the fire trucks? Like, what's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, there's a woman, and the HRT member runs across the building to grab her. He's screaming at her, where are the kids? Where are the kids? And she's just looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
Heather Jones recalls seeing this, and she's sobbing. Now, Heather Jones has been released. She's out.
She was the last little kid released.
She was the last kid released, and they brought them to the group home where Brian was having his little temper tantrum.
Right.
And she says she overhears the women in the group home saying the children's parents mustn't love them, and she starts to cry.
Right.
That's really sad.
That is sad because Heather Jones, I have so much empathy for.
Me too.
Because, I mean, Jesus, at 8 years old, she lost everything.
Everything. Okay. So 9 people ended up surviving that day. 9.
Jesus Christ.
Lee says this was a tragedy the entire country watched at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Sniper Christ says there were Bible pages burning, there were skulls, and there were bodies and ammo, and it was like apocalyptic. April 20th, we see Clinton make a statement announcing the disaster, and he pretty much says, David Koresh was dangerous, irrational, and probably insane. Like the FBI and the government has officially, that is their line. This is a crazy
they've got an official
guy.
narrative.
This is the crazy guy who killed 4 federal agents and this needed to happen. No, it didn't, but okay.
It didn't.
We see Chuck Schumer and John Conyers.
Baby Chuck.
Yep.
I know.
And they're saying the FBI fucked this up. A bunch of House representatives, Republican and Democrat, agree this is bad. Then we see April 19th, 1995, Timothy McVeigh blows up the, what was the name of the building? The Murrah building, but what was the first name? The Edward R. Murrah?
No, because that's Edward R. Murrow.
Sorry.
I think it's the Arthur Murrow building. Yeah. I'll look it up to be sure. I don't want to get that wrong.
So that is in Oklahoma City, as you guys remember. It is
I've been to the memorial.
It was real bad.
Oh my God, it was awful.
There was a daycare in that building. It was...
Yeah, it was the Alfred P. Murrah building.
Thank you.
Okay.
Lee says she had to stop her car and throw up in a ditch when she realized it was the same. I love Lee's dramatic, like her penchants for drama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just I pulling over and throwing up in a ditch. I believe it.
Yeah,
I would
believe it too. Yeah.
Ricks was also the FBI special agent in charge of the Oklahoma City office, so there's a direct connection.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget, didn't Columbine happen on the 19th, or was it the 20th of 99?
I think it's the 20th, actually, but let's find. We can find this out.
It was April 20th. Yep.
Okay.
1999.
Columbine was not at all these groups of people.
It was not these groups of people, but I feel like this time of year for me gets squirrely.
It does.
Because I have a lot of just bad feelings around all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know.
I had a friend growing up, her birthday is April 19th, and I remember when both of these things happened on April 19th, and we're not, I mean, we're Facebook friends. I haven't talked to her in a million years, but I think about that every year of like I have friends who have 2 friends of mine have September 11th birthdays.
I know, that's terrible.
Yeah.
So Gary says, look, David Koresh is ultimately responsible.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean we didn't make mistakes. We did, a lot of
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
Ricks says, the FBI were the real hostages here. We were held hostage by David Koresh. We were actors in his play. And he's not wrong when he says this part. He had already written the script. We tried to change it, but we couldn't.
Yeah.
I
He
do
had a plan.
believe that they had a plan.
He I don't know if the plan they had is exactly what wound up getting executed, but they did not plan on coming out of there alive. David
No,
Koresh did not plan on them coming out of there alive.
correct. Right. The followers might not have known that, but he did not
Right.
plan on that.
Right. Or they might have known that and believed him, but I don't feel like it's their choice at that point because they're so brainwashed
Agreed.
by him.
Thibodeau says the people who died in Waco were martyrs and they died for their beliefs. And I wrote, even the babies, dickbag? Even
Mhm.
the babies?
Mhm.
I can't with that. I can't with like those people were martyrs and we had like, yes, it was horribly sad, but there were children and babies who died in there that
There were
had
children and
no,
babies that they put underground
they weren't
these
prescribing to this ideology. They were
no, they had no
innocent
choice.
victims here, so they're not
No.
martyrs.
No.
So Kathy says, yeah, that was painful, but they died for their own reasons and they did it for God. Okay.
Sure.
Jim Kavanaugh's crying and he says, we tried everything. And he had such a hold on their minds.
Mhm.
Bill says he thinks about Waco every day. And
Mhm.
David Koresh, you're an asshole, and I hope you're in hell. That's what he says. I'm
I
like,
know.
okay, Bill.
Okay.
Now, Dick DeGurbin, again, another one with the flair for the dramatic, says there
Right.
was a law book with the page open to the Fourth Amendment that did not burn. And we all know the Fourth Amendment is free from unreasonable search and seizure. No, they had reasonable search.
Yes. They knew they had grenades
Right.
and
This
automatic weapons in
Right. This
there.
was not the Revolutionary War where we're just ripping
No.
open doors.
No,
This
this is
was
not the
you had
Sedition Act.
amassed a
An
fucking
arsenal.
arsenal. Right.
Yeah.
Sniper Christ says, I've tried to make sense of how a cow field became the dying spot for 80 people. All I know is, and this was an interesting quote, I thought, violence appears out of nowhere, destroys lives, and drifts off to another scene. And I've
Mm.
given up trying to figure out why. I thought that was interesting.
That's an it's an interesting metaphor.
I know, and I want to like Sniper Christ. I really do, but I feel like he's a little aggro.
There's some things I like about him and some things I don't.
Yeah, I agree.
Like Jim Kavanaugh, I like a lot.
Me too.
Buford, I like a lot. Gary, I like a lot. These 3 people I have a ton of respect and empathy for. Not to say they didn't do things that weren't great, but I think they were all trying to do the right thing.
I think they tried to do the right thing. I think they saw the Branch Davidians as humans, as
Mhm.
people,
Yeah.
and tried to treat them as such.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Heather has some real survivor's guilt. Her whole
Yeah, she
family was
does.
murdered. She feels alone. She was the last child to come out alive. The
The video of her listening to her dad's voice on the recording
I
the
know.
last time they talked on the
I know.
I don't cry, I almost cried.
Yeah, it was
It was
sad.
heartbreaking.
The black screen of death tells us that 4 agents and 82 Branch Davidians died during this standoff, including 28 children.
Fucking
I also have a note here. Did you know that this is where, and I'm saying this with as much sarcasm as I could muster, National Treasure Alex Jones got his start?
Oh, I did not
hmm
know this.
He started InfoWars after he tried to rebuild a church at Mount Carmel and realized like there was an appetite for this kind of thing. Then he
Oh,
starts
shit.
InfoWars. So we have the FBI to thank for him as well.
Great. Good job.
Mhm. Good job. So that's it. That's the end of the miniseries. I mean, it's a lot. It's intense. It's important, though. I feel
It
like
is important. What do you think do you have a theory on what could have prevented this?
I do believe that if they had continued negotiating, that they could have either gotten him out or got somebody else out.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, they were working on the mothers, that was a good angle.
They were
Um,
they were making headway. I really think if they hadn't done the driving the tanks over his cars,
yeah,
they would have
yeah,
had a lot more time.
mhm. I mean, it's hard to say because I think the whole situation was fucked up right from the beginning.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think they were honestly they had don't forget they had microphones in there. They had a lot of evidence. They had Robert Rodriguez in there. They
Mhm.
knew how committed these people were
Right, and they were not
to
up to good.
committing suicide if something were to go down.
Yeah.
And I honestly think they thought that if they arrested David Koresh at a Sheets,
Mhm.
that that would happen.
Yeah. It's
I don't know.
the whole thing is heartbreaking, and I'm not sure we have as a country have learned a lot from it.
I will say this. There are days that I hate social media, and there
Mhm.
are days that I love it. And when I see
Mhm.
something like this, it reminds me of the level of transparency we have today, thanks to
True.
social media that we have never had before.
True.
Like, there if this happened today, there would be people inside that
Yeah.
compound tweeting out what was happening. We would
Absolutely,
be
and there'd be
knowing
people
what
with
was happening.
drones. Like,
Yes.
there would be all sorts of, people who decide they're gonna become reporters and investigators, and
But there would also be,
there would
like
be citizen detectives, Amy.
there would be citizen detectives, like, somebody like us would
Mhm.
go and get the Freedom of Information Act
Yeah.
and get a bunch of shit and put it all out on the internet so everybody
Yep.
knew what was going on. There's so much more transparency now than there has been in the past.
Agreed.
Is there enough? No,
No. No.
but there's more,
Mhm.
and that's always a good thing because
Agreed.
shit like this can't happen when people are watching.
Agreed. Agreed.
That's how I feel, and, I feel that way about police brutality. Like, I feel like
Agreed. They should
the
all be in cameras.
yeah,
Like,
the more eyes on the situations, the better.
the more transparency we have, the less opportunities there are for corruption,
Absolutely.
period.
Yeah.
But this is heartbreaking. I find David Thibodeau to be fascinating because I don't think he was a true believer in the way, say, Kathy
Yeah,
was.
I don't know what his deal is.
I think he was a true believer of David Koresh. I don't necessarily think he was a true believer of the religion, if that makes sense.
There was just a time, and this might have been a Gen X thing, and David Thibodeau's firmly in Gen X,
Oh, yeah.
where there was this real sense of like we were just searching for something all the time.
Mhm.
Like we wanted to
Mhm.
belong to something. We needed to. I don't know where that comes from in our generation, but it's there.
Mhm. He's 54, so yeah, he is.
100%. And so
Yep.
like I don't I do believe like I see this happening that
Mhm.
as a young man, he's looking for something, he finds it, that's it. I mean, that's how cults start. I mean,
Yeah.
Jonestown started that way, people were just looking for like equality and a simple life and
Right.
Manson too, like it's I don't know. He was just looking for something and he found it. And
Yeah,
this
I mean,
is how
problem
people
with
corrupt
cults,
religion.
which I think is one of the I love that Sarah Edmondson from Nexium says this. People don't join cults, they join things that they think are positive.
Yes.
She joined Nexium because she wanted to become a more successful actor and wanted to basically worthy up, level up
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
her life. And then she winds up in this. People want
Mhm.
to find love, so they wind up with Jeff and Shalea. Like,
Oh god. Yeah.
but
Yeah, no, I
it's
get it. I get
they're
it.
not starting out in a cult.
Yes, I get it. And then,
It's
very subtly, these leaders start to turn you to paranoia, turn you to,
Mhm.
there's an outside threat, there's an external threat to us,
They're
and
very,
then you
very
band
slowly turning up the
together.
heat.
Yes. Yeah.
Very slowly, so you don't realize you're on fire until you're on fire.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. Anything else?
No,
It's
we
hard
could
to
probably
wrap
talk
this
about this
one
for
up.
17 more years, but the one person I feel like we didn't talk a ton about was Kathy.
I need to know what she's doing now. Who's
I
Brian? Where's Brian?
Where's
Brian
Brian? And
okay?
it was interesting to listen to the podcast about how once Brian was born, her husband kind of separated from him because they all wanted all the children to be raised as Davids.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Oh,
It is
also in
nuts.
that podcast, guys, they talk about that reporter, John Malcolmore. Is that
John
his name, or
Macklemore,
am I
yeah.
trying to say
Macklemore.
how his career was like ruined because somebody
Yep.
erroneously said he was the dude who tipped off the ATF,
Yep.
and his career was completely ruined.
And he thought this was going to be the thing that made
The big
his
break.
career,
Yep.
and it destroyed his career.
Yeah, it's really
And
sad.
it is. I mean, the break happened because this photographer just went to Heather's dad and was like, "Hey, do you know where this crazy compound is? Because shit's going down there today." Like,
Yeah. And
it
the
was just
guy's not even
botched.
mentioned. His name is Jim Peller. We know you,
Mm.
Jim Peller.
The whole thing was just botched start to finish.
Yeah. I mean, it's not Jim Peller's fault, but,
No. There were so many things that went wrong.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's heartbreaking because a lot of people died.
A lot of people died. A lot of kids
And
died.
a lot of kids died.
Jesus. All right, my friend. Guys, watch this documentary. It's worth
Well
a
worth
watch.
watching.
100%.
And if you haven't watched the dramatization, I'd also say that's well worth a watch as well.
I would say that as well. And as always, be a critical thinker. Watch
Mhm.
the documentary. Don't take it for gospel. Fact check it. Do some research. I
Right.
do that with everything. Like, I don't trust anything a documentary tells me.
Yeah, I always look
I'm
up
always
stuff
like,
too. Because every documentarian, try as they might, has an agenda. The way you choose to tell the story is your agenda.
yes. Yep.
And it's impossible to be completely fair to everybody. It just is.
I agree.
It just
I
is.
agree.
So, but this is good.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you jump in our Facebook group, Backdoor Friends. We have a lot of
Almost
fun
at
in there.
800, Amy.
I can't believe how we're growing.
I know, it's amazing.
It's amazing. And it's so supportive and loving in there. I love it so much.
Yeah, I love it so much too.
And follow us on Instagram. We're building up our Instagram presence as well, which is exciting. And,
It is.
if you like what you hear, leave a 5-star review. If you don't like what you hear, go outside and garden. You don't have to leave a 2-star review. You don't have to do that.
It's winter, so go
Oh.
organize your spice cabinet.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Redo your pantry like I just did when my sister was here.
I'm going to redo mine this week.
There you
It's a
go.
mess.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you soon.
Take care, everyone.